Hi, this is 11 o'clock on a Friday. This is one of my absolute favorite moments of the day where we are sharing with all of you, our Hispanic leaders and the Hispanic community, information, education, and entertainment in this time, in this hard time, and this quarantine period for COVID-19. Today, I have the incredible pleasure to have my personal mentor, my guru, my role model, and the chair of our board. Um, Her name is Beth Brady, and she is the chair of the board of World Human Foundation. And before introducing Beth, I just want to give a minute of Beth and also talk about Beth, how she came across in the foundation and the incredible role that she has had. Beth, I met her when she was like an incredible big wig, surrounded by 25 different people, being the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer of Principal Financial. And she was working before with, she has an extensive career in corporate America, always doing strategy and marketing for organizations such as Unilever, Unilever, General Mills, Principal Advisor, and others. A number of the things that, like I learned from Beth even before her meeting here, is how important it is to be laser focused on what you want to do, how important it is to know your data so that you can adapt it. I learned from Beth before meeting her that she changed the strategy of marketing from Mazola, for example, from oil, that she was spending a lot of the marketing budget towards a population where the consumption was with Hispanics. And instead of actually like diluting that, she was forceful and courageous and changed her marketing budget to put it where Hispanics were, because Hispanics were the consumers of Mazola, and she put it there. Then more than a year ago, I asked Beth whether she can help us. We, being the World Human Foundation, absolutely new to the space, absolutely new as a foundation. And I knew that it was so important for us to have very clear strategy, and be laser focused on what we're doing. And a number of you have always said that we've been making a huge progress in very short time. And this is because of Beth Brady. Beth Brady helped us as a foundation get to where we were, establish the thinking, what is the unique value proposition that we can bring, what are the areas that we can do well, what is the need, and what is the market opportunity for us. So she helped us a year ago during hours and hours of strategy and condensation of the thinking, understanding what is our business proposition and our business analysis. It's so great, Beth Brady, to have you today here, sharing your wisdom with us and seeing whether we can do a live example about how to do business transformation online.
Great, thank you, Claudia, and hello to everybody out there in this virtual world that we're now living in. And that was a very kind description of my background and the work I've done with you. The thing about my career is I've spent most of my time doing what Claudia referred to as business transformation, or as many people know it, turnaround work. So businesses or companies or brands or products that are struggling and can't seem to find their way, and how do you, for one reason or another, and how do you get that turned around? So that has been, and the Mazola example she gave wasn't one of those businesses that was struggling, and it was really about figuring out how do we adapt what we were doing to take advantage of what's going on in the marketplace. So that's kind of my background. And although times like this are horrible for all of us, there's just nothing good you can say about what is going on around here. But there's opportunity out there, and we can spend all day long worrying about things. We can spend all day long struggling with what to do next. I think at some point in any curve, and this happens in turnaround, is you have this moment of denial, may go on for a while, and then you have this panic, and you don't know what to do next. And then the next phase is, okay, now we got to get down to action and start figuring out what to do next. So I think what we would like this conversation today to be about is, yeah, we've seen all the numbers, we're getting inundated every day with reports on what's happening, and a lot of it is so grim. But I want to focus our time today on saying, okay, what's a construct for how organizations and individuals should think about emerging from this. And you can emerge from this, we will all emerge from this. But what you do now can be very, very instrumental in how you emerge from this. So Claudia and I want to have this conversation because the real live example is the foundation. The We Are All Human Foundation is an organization like any other. And when this hit, it hit nonprofits as hard, if not harder than anybody, right? Because they depend on monies coming in from corporate America and other organizations. And all of a sudden, all of those companies, all of those funding sources put a halt. And so what do you do? It's no different than any other organization. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and I'm going to throw it back over to Claudia, is, roughly 2 weeks ago, and Claudia and I have this great relationship where we just get on the phone, and that's what I do. I'm a strategic advisor, and that's the work that I do, strategy work. One thing I would tell all of you is remember this: strategy drives execution. Execution does not drive strategy. So with that sort of table setting, I'm going to throw it back to Claudia, and I'm going to let her tell you about our phone call about 2 weeks ago, and then we'll talk a little bit about what I talked her through and how you can all take that sort of instructively to help you think about where you're going to go from here.
And Beth, again, like being the strategic guru and the brain of the organization that you have been for all of us throughout the year, and like picking up the phone, coming to New York, spending days and days in whiteboarding, we put together a fantastic, very comprehensive plan to unify Hispanics, number one, and then we turned it around to how are we going to give a platform to Hispanics. So we had a plan that we worked for, 7-8 months to put together a campaign to change the perception of Hispanics. We, like thanks to Gray Wings, Per Pedersen, and Pepe Aguilar, we got an incredible multi-million-dollar donation from WPP, a creative agency, to put this symbol together. So Beth was guiding us on how to do this. Provide Hispanics with a platform to showcase their incredible contributions, so that we have a perfect plan. The Hispanic Star campaign, moving Hispanics from invisible to visible, from negative to positive, from takers to makers. We had the idea to launch at the White Sox Stadium, and then all of a sudden, boom, all of that is gone. And I started actually, like getting into the calls with the people that we had already, the calls with YouTube and with the sponsors and with the community. And they were like, there's only one conversation that we're going to have from now on, and that's called COVID-19. And there's no more space for Hispanic stars because we're not here to shine, we're here to survive. So I picked up the phone and I called Beth and I said, like, we have to change. We have to do something. How do we do this? Do we close the shop and wake up, like in the fall when this is done? Do we continue insisting and try to actually delay this for a month and launch this in May instead of March? What do we do? And then Beth gave me the best framework that I've heard, and we came up with this transformation. Beth.
So what Claudia is referring to is when things like this happened, and this could, when businesses need to go through transformation or turnaround, it's any number of things that could happen. A new competitor came in and disrupted them. Maybe they're in a country or a location where there was a weather event, a hurricane or something, a tsunami. There's many, maybe the company had a data breach and all of a sudden, their customers are going away from it. There's many, those are all circumstances, and certainly what we're going through right now is about as bad as it can get. And so every company is going through this. So the first thing that everybody needs to remember is you all have what I call superpowers. Every company has them. They have assets. They have things that they do well. They're differentiators, and you have to understand what those are. People tend to get caught up in like, well, I make this widget, so how am I going to sell this widget? Think back on what your superpower is and what you do well. That's one. And then follow a framework that I refer to as now, near, next. Now is, what do we need to do today? What, like today is day one, it's panic mode. What do we need? What information do we need to get out? What things do we need to do immediately? Near is, okay, we're still in this, but we need to start pivoting and thinking about how we're going to apply our superpower or our assets or those unique skills that we have to a new set of problems. Because what you were doing is you were addressing an old set of problems in an old world. Today, there's an entirely new set of problems. And how does your organization, or how do you as an individual, because this goes for individuals as well, how do you apply your superpowers to this new set of problems? And that becomes the work you do in near. And then next is, we're going to come out of this. And what have we learned? And what are we going to apply? And how are we going to evolve ourselves with this new world that we're going to be in? Because nothing will be the same. There will be a lot of things different. We'll go back to living our lives in a much more sane way, but there will be a lot of changes. So the first thing that I'll ask Claudia to tell you all about is, in this conversation when she called me in, was it fair to say a little bit of a panic, Claudia? I said to her, I said, let's focus on this framework and let's focus on your superpower. So Claudia, why don't you talk to everyone about what is your individual superpower that we came up with?
And I still have, like from that Saturday morning, all the notes that I was taking in my kitchen while all my family was asleep. And I was panicking and saying, like, what do I do? I mean, what do we do when we know that what we have is no longer valid? And you told me, first of all, this framework of the now, near, and next, knowing how important the work that we have done could be, understanding the reality, which is that Hispanics are disproportionately affected by COVID today, on the now, on the near, but also on the next, that we have to do it, that we have a number of Hispanic children that could be left behind. And so you questioned, Beth, what is our superpower? What are the things that we have that we uniquely have? And you mentioned one of them is my own expertise in this kind of scenario. So how do I apply that expertise and that experience to provide a framework? The number two is, you said you have the Hispanic stars. You just have to put them to act. You have to activate your network, because one of your superpowers, Claudia, my chief chair of the board, told me, one of your superpowers is that you have a very strong network. Now you have to activate it and to put it into this framework to demarry yourself from the next. So the Hispanic star will become a next, and you have to think of the now. How do we activate that network on the now? How do you activate also this facilitator and convening power that your all human has to put together something that can address the needs of the now? And so through that, activating the network, those are the two superpowers: the convening power, the experience, but also the activation, the network that should be put to action.
That's exactly right. And so as we are all sitting on this webinar, in that conversation with Claudia, we talked about, okay, the strategy then is to activate the network to be able to lead to action. So part of this conversation today is we put out a lot of information out there, but we want to help people move to action. Like, we want to help you think about, well, what am I going to do now? And what am I going to do in the near? And how am I uniquely, how my organization or me individually, how can I help with this new set of problems? And I'll give you an example. We've all heard them, right? We've heard about the company that makes pillows and realized that their superpower wasn't making pillows. That's a product. Their superpower was construction of products, materials. And so they've taken their entire operation, and in 3 days, they were able to be up and running to make face masks, right? That's a need. The new set of problems. People need face masks. People need to figure out how to work from home. Well, do you have some technical ability to help people construct home offices? Does your company have I think about a company like Best Buy that defines themselves as brick and mortar. Well, right now, nobody's going to brick and mortar. They're not going to stores. But Best Buy has this capability of being able to help people figure out how to work from home in this new environment and do it in a really effective way. So how could they reconstruct their proposition based upon the expertise they have in electronics, and if you think about their geek squad, in advice. And it's just about understanding that new set of problems. So again, the first thing that you need to focus on is the new set of problems. And so part of what Claudia and I talked about that I think is really instructive for everyone here is, hey, the Hispanic Star campaign, I mean, I have been working with Claudia behind the scenes on this from the beginning, and I have as much passion for this.
What was your idea?
Well, it was a collective, but it's something really important, and I really want to see it. But no company right now wants to hear that. They're like, we're not saying that's not a problem that you're trying to solve. We're just saying that's not the most important problem right now. So the first conversation is, well, what problems exist out there related to COVID-19? And how can Claudia, with her superpowers, develop something to help address those? So hence, what we're part of here is this webinar, but the Hispanic Recovery Plan, which, by the way, I would say is work that is going to impact anybody that's looking for recovery. Small businesses, a lot of them owned by Hispanics, a lot of them owned by Hispanic women, right? Latinas are a huge small business population. But that work is going to help. So maybe, Claudia, talk a little bit about how, leaving the strategic conversation you and I had, you had a whole bunch of things that you were doing. How did you and the team quickly, and I mean really quickly, get to a point where you're doing a webinar a day, where you're doing, because I think that process will help people. And part of it is just having to realize you just have to give up on a few things in the short term to be able to do the right stuff, to be around in the long term, to get those things going.
I would say that it was very painful particularly for some members of the team, to just like give up that deck that was so beautiful and so perfect on the Hispanic Star campaign, and realize that we couldn't address that now. And that's painful. I mean, like, it's just like taking like a piece of your skin. What we realized is that we needed to have more understanding of what was the new set of problems that were addressed by, that we needed to address for Hispanics in COVID. And one of them was information. So we talked to different experts on, like either pandemics or crisis, and was imperative to make sure that our leaders had the most important information so that they can not only share information, but take better decisions. So we said, we have the platforms, so let's use the Hispanic Star platform to convene for webinars. So we're bringing the activation of the network that you mentioned, Beth, to bring every Tuesday the best of the state of art, that we have the experts of the world talking to our Hispanics, so that we can be informed and take better decisions, so that we know when more or less our business is supposed to be back to normal. What about the pandemic? Where are we? Then we started understanding that people have to work from home, and that this is a precious time to reskill, to re-educate, to retrain, and to gain more sets, like the more skill sets. So bringing that webinar, those webinars every day, seemed to be the, like a solution. And we're agile, so we're going to see whether some of the issues, things that we're doing are going to stick or not. But pretty much understanding that set of problems. And the last thing is that we understood that it is very, very hard for everyone to try to figure out, where do I find information about how do I work from home? What do I do with my children? Where do I find educational toolkits? Or what do I do with my mental health? Or where do I apply for a credit? So we decided to use the platform and use our resources to try to convene a catalog of resources. And then just activating on like making sure that we activated all the assets that we have and to put them to action. So we started looking at what is the problem and where can we find a solution that is unique. So some of the cases we wanted to do solutions, but everybody was doing them. For example, just doing campaigns for health. Everybody's already doing hand washing campaigns. So that was an area where it was absolutely clear we shouldn't, we didn't have a space.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because there are a lot of problems out there right now, and we're not all equipped to solve all those problems, but find those problems you're uniquely equipped to. So I go back to the conversation Claudia and I have, and really her ability to convene. And for any of you on this webinar that has been to any of the events that she puts together, regional events as well as the big one in New York every year. as well as ones that, where there are big gatherings like World Economic Forum and others like that. She has this great ability to bring people together and get them excited to move things forward, to solve problems. So she does that better than anybody I know. And I think her ability to put these, and her team, which she's got a great team behind her, the ability to put these webinars together is proof that this can be done. So,
but the other thing, Beth, just to say, if I look at myself, I think that I'm blessed to be able to have someone like you, and a number of people like you that are, like you're the chief marketing officer of Chief Outsiders, and they do turnaround work. I think that what I think is, because you were able to help me identify, one, what is a new set of problems, two, what is your superpower, three, what is a unique value proposition that you can bring, and then give me the framework, the now, the near, the next. And you also gave me a framework before, which was think of the issues, the outcomes that you want to achieve, and the actions that you're going to take. And if you start thinking about frameworks the way that you have taught me, I think that those are very valuable tools for our community. So what I asked Beth Brady whether she can do what she did for me today for other people from our community that have a turnaround situation, that you need to think of your business. How do I survive now? How do I turn it around? What is my superpower? How do I have a thinking partner the way that Beth has been for us? And so that we can have maybe every Friday a conversation with some of you on the Hispanic community that can come and have someone like a brain and a strategy turnaround person like Beth Brady and her network, so that we can do this. Is that is that something we can count on you, Beth?
Yes, you can count on me. I mean, I can tell you in my career, I've been faced with every type of business problem you can imagine. And everyone's different. I will say that every problem is a little bit unique. What's not unique, though, is applying a really good problem solving construct to it, a really good structure, as framework, as Claudia said. Oftentimes, companies and individuals and others don't succeed because they're not solving the right problem. And so really, really important. And as we, exit this webinar today, the first thing I would ask everybody on it is to really say to themselves, okay, I can sit around and be upset about what's happening. I can wallow in this forever and ever, but really I want to take action. I want to start thinking about, what is recovery going to look like for me, for my family, for my company, for my organization. And the first step in doing that is saying, okay, we are going to take action, but you can't take action until you figure out the problem that you're trying to solve. So a really good thing is to really give yourself some time. I'll give you one example. And I worked on, believe it or not, when I was at General Mills, I worked on the Progresso soup business, which is a really, really great business. And it was declining like crazy. It had been growing and it just fell apart. And everybody thought the problem that was out there was pricing, right? It was a price war, but actually that wasn't the problem. And so if we had gone chasing that problem, we would have spent a lot of money, putting a lot of, effort out there and still not getting results. The problem was that the selection of soups that people wanted was no longer available, because there were all of these fancy gluten-free, sodium-free, and people were like, just give me my chicken noodle. Where can I find that on the shelf? It's not there anymore. And because we had, what we called rationalize that space. And so what happened was people were going to other alternatives. And so make sure you understand that make sure you really identified the right problem. Because if you don't, you will chase a lot of activity that isn't going to lead to anything. So that, coming out of today, I would say, what is the problem you're trying to solve? One. Two, what are your superpowers? What is your company good at? What are you uniquely, or what, maybe you don't even think of it. Maybe you think of yourself as making pillows, but you're really sewing, right? So think about laddering up your skills and your capabilities and your differentiators to a little bit of a higher level, right? Don't think about, well, I make X. Think about, well, what is it that you bring? So it's that higher order of what you do and what you do well. So then get that piece, and then just apply it to, either one of these frameworks. I think over the next several webinars that we do, we'll give examples of how we can get that, what is the issue? What are the outcomes? We can do that. But then there's what do I need to do now? What is important in the near term? And down the road is next. And in that process, you may find that there are some things that you thought were really important 2 weeks ago and are just not relevant anymore. And that's really, in Claudia's case, it's like, we want to launch this Hispanic Star campaign, at the opening day of baseball. And well, guess what? Baseball's not opening in March, And so the whole world has changed. So that what you thought was important is not, it's next, that's down the road. So think about what's important now. And then in the near term, how are we going to begin to build out the business to solve the problems that are out there?
Beth, how do we want people to submit how do we want our community to invite them to submit a problem, or like their situation, so that you can consider inviting them for next week to be part of a conversation, and so that we can all learn from like live business cases? How do we invite them to submit?
Well, I think the best way is probably to do it through the We Are All Human network, right? So they can.
But how do we structure that? They have to say,
well,
one.
Here is the best way to do it is to say, here's my issue, right? Here's my problem, or here's my business. I'm in the business of this, or I'm an independent contractor. I do fitness training, and all of a sudden there's nobody, whatever it is, if you're an individual, or if you're a company, or if you're part of a company in an organization, what is your situation? We always start with, what's the situation? What is the core situation? Because usually out of that, we get to what the issue is. Oftentimes we stop at the surface issues, but you have to dig a little deeper. So if we know the background, all kind of the facts that are out there, then we can start saying, okay, what is the true issue? And then the other thing is, I think people should say, and this is what I think we do well. This is our superpower. But think about it, I always say, brands you never want to define your brand, right, by the products that you make, because products come and go over the years. You want to define your brand by what it is that you do for others, right? Nobody cares about what you do. They care about what you will do for them. So think about that in the terms of, what do you do for others? And that helps you think about what your superpower is. When I was in financial service, our superpower wasn't that we had insurance policies. Nobody really cared about that. What they cared about is that the insurance helped protect them if something were to happen. So it was protection was what they cared about. And that is what our superpower was, protection. So think about it in terms of that, and kind of try to put that together. And then the conversation will go, okay, how do we structure, a recovery plan going forward? So
what we're going to do is, we're running out of time. We ran out of time, but we're going to close it here by saying, submit. So we learned today about, like understanding what is the problem, what is the situation, what is your superpower, what do you do really, really well, and then what is unique for you. Submit this, stating what the problem is, to info@worldhuman.org. Beth Brady has agreed to, as part of World Human, the chair of the board of World Human, but also as chief marketing officer, to come and not only share, but also bring a network of people that can help solve one problem at a time. So if you're interested in being, supported and guided the way that I've been by Beth, with not the amount of time, of course, but in one session on next Friday, you have to submit it to info@worldhuman.org. Beth Brady, I want to thank you so very much, not only for what you're doing today, but what you have been doing for World Human and keeping us focused and keeping us strategic, and for all your help, not only as as the chair of the board, but also as a friend. I want to make sure that we use this time to move from what Beth said, from a reality check to hope, from fear to action. And I want to end this webinar by saying thank you so very much, Beth, Brady. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And I couldn't end this webinar without saying, for all of you that have faith, please pray. My mom has COVID. So, thank you so much.
Wow,
Let's pray that she's fine. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, if you can.
Bye.